The story of the Illuminati all begins with a man called Adam Weishaupt, a professor at the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria, modern-day Germany. Well, that's a lie actually. It really begins in 1773 when the Jesuits, or Order of Jesus as they were also known, were dissolved by Pope Clement XIV. Of course his name's written XIV, but luckily due to a childhood of playing Final Fantasy games, I'm aware what numbers they stand for. Dissolving the order was, broadly speaking, a political move to keep the Catholic countries of Europe from breaking away from the Church. The Jesuits had experienced a decades-long wave of suppression among European nations, as they were seen themselves as being quite secretive and conspiratorial. Despite the order being dissolved, they still had a lot of power in Bavaria, and specifically retained a lot of influence over the University of Ingolstadt, an influence that was not lost on the young Weishaupt. As you can imagine, given the order's recent dissolution, they were anxious to exert whatever control they still had in order to continue spreading their ideas. This included attacks against any non-clerical member of university staff, or any members of staff they felt were being too liberal or spreading the ideas of Protestantism. These attacks could range from forcing professors to change their coursework to openly discrediting their research. This activity frustrated Weishaupt beyond belief, literally, as it instilled a strong anti-clerical bent in the young professor and made him determined to spread the ideas of the Enlightenment. The way in which Adam felt he could best spread these ideas was to form his own secret society of like-minded individuals. I can't say forming a secret society would be the first thing that would come to my mind, but then again, I guess you can't exactly have a book club when most of the books you want to read are banned. Before deciding to create his own secret society, Weishaupt had initially considered joining the Freemasons. However, two factors dissuaded him from this. One was his inability to gain enough money to pay the entrance fee, and the second was his insistence that the mysteries which the Masons held were too puerile and readily accessible to the general public, so they didn't interest him. I suspect he probably formed that second part of the opinion after being told he didn't have enough money to get in. So instead, Weishaupt set about making his own secret society, but better, with hookers and blackjack. Well, not really, but also potentially really, who knows, it was a secret society after all. His original name for the group was Bund der Perfectibilisten, or Covenant of Perfectibility. However, this was soon changed as it sounded a bit odd, even to 18th century Bavarian ears. So the group would then become the Perfectibilists, which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, as I can tell you having recorded this multiple times. The group was finally formed in 1776 with 4 of Weishaupt's students. They took the Owl of Minerva as their symbol, and each took an alias, with Weishaupt taking the name Spartacus, and the others taking the names Ajax, Agathon, Tiberius, and Erasmus Rotterdamus. If you're curious, Erasmus Rotterdamus happens to be my favourite Transformer. But I do think there's something quite charming about the names that they ended up picking. If it shows you anything, it's that even 250 years ago, we were already creatively bankrupt when it came to usernames. I'm pretty sure you'd struggle to get any of these as your PlayStation user tag, except for maybe Erasmus Rotterdamus, and that's simply because I don't think you can have that many letters. Speaking of names, in 1778, the group finally changed their name to Illuminati Orden, or Order of the Illuminati. However, supposedly Weishaupt also strongly considered changing the name to B Order. I have no idea what made him consider this name, but luckily he decided on the more marketable Illuminati. B Order, it's crazy. Wait a minute. B Order. B Movie. Jerry Seinfeld. The Illuminati. I have to go. Sorry about that. Ended up going nowhere really. B Movie does not hold up, by the way. Now where were we? Oh yes. In reality, this is when the Illuminati began to slowly grow. Its most fervent member initially was Ajax, or Massenhausen to use his real name. Massenhausen set about recruiting as many members as he could. Initially, Weishaupt was delighted by this enthusiasm, However, eventually he saw this as more of a liability, as Massenhausen was recruiting particularly poor quality candidates. Massenhausen continued like this until eventually leaving the group altogether after finding a job outside of Bavaria. My own non-historical assumption is that Massenhausen managed to find a girlfriend and stop needing to hang out with what I genuinely believe were a secret society of loser virgins. However, during his time in the Illuminati, Massenhausen did manage to make one meaningful contribution, which was the recruitment of an individual called Xavier von Zwock. Let's be honest, if you're recruiting for a secret society and you meet a man called Xavier von Zwock, you're going to try to get him involved. That name has evil genius written all over it. I can't tell you reliably if von Zwock was an evil genius, but I can tell you that he ended up taking over the Munich chapter from Massenhausen after he left, and would turn out to be a much more successful recruiter. By the end of the summer of 1778, the order had amassed 27 members among 5 locations. The orders had 3 grades: Novice, Minerval, and Illuminated Minerval. Well, that's great, guys. Couldn't think of a third name? No, that's okay. The recruiting criteria for the Illuminati was exclusively Christian men of good character, who were crucially not already members of other secret societies. Bit difficult to police that one, what with them being secret societies, but we'll take them at their word. They are Christian men of good character, after all. However, Weishaupt had a problem with his new recruits, and that was difficulty stopping them from being seduced by the allure of the Freemasons, much more established and popular secret society, of course. Why just join the Illuminati when I can join the Masons as well? Use the Illuminati as kind of a backup secret society. To combat this, Weishaupt had the somewhat hilarious plan of breaking his own rule and joining the Freemasons himself in order to steal aspects of their rituals and presumably offer it for a reduced price. Weishaupt must have improved his financial position from earlier in the decade, as he did manage to join the Freemasons. However, according to Weishaupt, after making it through the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, he hadn't learned of anything worth stealing. It's almost as if the Freemasons had experience of keeping aspects of their society slightly more secret. Von Zwock, a bit more pragmatic than Weishaupt, suggested that the Illuminati instead form an alliance with the Freemasons and open their own lodge, which they did, the eventual goal being to learn the secrets of the Masons and then break away and start forming their own independent lodges. Not long after this, which is history speak for I can't remember the exact year, the Illuminati managed to recruit a man who would go on to be quite instrumental in their continued development, a man called Adolf Koenig. Koenig had originally joined the Masons with the idea of reforming it. However, having progressed through the order, discovered that the Masons weren't so interested in his proposed reforms. While at a Freemason event, Koenig, still frustrated by the lack of reception to his ideas, met a man called Costanzo Marchesi di Costanzo. Oh my god, do they have to be this hard to pronounce? Who informed him that there was already a secret order aligned exactly with Koenig's reforms, and it was of course the Illuminati. As if some kind of conspiratorial travelling salesman, Costanzo showed Koenig and some of Koenig's friends the entry reading material for the Illuminati. While Koenig's compatriots were unimpressed by the literature, which was mostly readily available in Protestant Germany at the time, Koenig was more enthused by the prospect of acting out his reformed ideas in this new secret society, and thus jumped at the opportunity. Weishaupt was delighted to welcome on board such a well-connected Mason as Koenig, but unfortunately he would be unable to allow Koenig to progress up the ranks of the Illuminati until he started recruiting members himself. Weishaupt apologized, but this is what his secret superiors within the order had told him. I know what you're thinking at this point. Oh, who are these shadowy superiors that Weishaupt is referring to? I don't remember them being mentioned in this story so far, and this seems to be quite a comprehensive history of the Illuminati. Is this where I find out who was really driving them? Well, I'm afraid not, as Weishaupt was actually making up these superiors to impress Koenig. I think this is pretty much the secret society equivalent of, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend, but she doesn't go to this school, and she is definitely real. However, unlike that famous schoolyard lie, Koenig actually believed this and was quite impressed by the allusion to the shadowy higher ranks of the Illuminati and quickly set about recruiting members. Koenig managed to secure some recruits, but found it difficult to persuade members to join when he couldn't actually provide any information about what they could expect by progressing through the ranks. As a side note, Koenig is actually mostly remembered in history for writing a very popular 18th century book about manners and etiquette, which would prove to be so influential, his last name literally became the German word for manners and etiquette. So as you can imagine, this man is pretty much an A-ranked recruiter, and even he was having trouble recruiting people. Koenig thus kept pressuring Weishaupt for more information about his shadowy overlords. However, Weishaupt kept putting off Koenig's demands for more information, saying that his shadowy superiors wouldn't allow it. Until eventually, Koenig said that he was going to have to leave if he wasn't given more information. It was at this point that Weishaupt faced a tough decision. He could either come clean and be found out to be a liar, or risk losing his best recruit. Weishaupt did the former and essentially admitted to Koenig that he had made up almost the entirety of the higher ranks of the Illuminati. While he couldn't offer any of the secret information that he'd promised Koenig, he could offer him a free hand in making up whatever rituals or rites he wanted to fill out the canon of the Illuminati. Shockingly, this offer was enough to placate Koenig, and instead of leaving, he set about recreating the Illuminati in the shape of his own ideas. Koenig subsequently refocused the Illuminati to downplay the anti-clerical nature which was so key to Weishaupt, and play up the Enlightenment teachings in order to widen the appeal of the group and avoid alienating people from the still largely Catholic Bavaria. Finally, now under the guidance of Adolf Koenig, the Illuminati began to gain the influence which Weishaupt had always dreamed of. Koenig set about using his connections to recruit prominent members of the Freemasons, including individuals who ran entire lodges themselves. This swell in recruitment was also aided by growing internal tensions between the different factions within the Freemasons. The Illuminati was a perfect outlet for these disillusioned Masons. Oh, the Illuminati, you're not like the other secret societies. The group eventually grew to include somewhere between 650 to 2,500 individuals. I know that's quite a wide range, but you have to keep in mind this is a secret society after all. And more important than sheer numbers, the Illuminati now contained a number of high-ranking officials from society at large. It would seem so that Weishaupt had finally achieved his goal of creating a liberal-minded secret society which held considerable political sway within the region. However, Weishaupt was increasingly frustrated by the control which Koenig now held over the movement. Can Weishaupt ever just be happy? Weishaupt found issue with the more mystical elements which Koenig had implemented within the higher ranks of the order, despite originally giving Koenig control over these elements of the order in order to keep him in the Illuminati. Weishaupt now set about a concerted effort to alienate Koenig from the movement, ultimately being successful, resulting in Koenig's resignation from the order in July 1784. Weishaupt's success was short-lived, however, as the order slowly faded without Koenig. The standard of recruit began to dwindle, and with that so did the rigor of the more secret elements of the order. Slowly, tales of the Illuminati became common knowledge among Bavarians. Locals shared tales of a shadowy cabal of men who secretly controlled the whole city. Similarly, as the Illuminati finally had the power to enact their anti-clerical opinions, using their influence, for example, to remove Jesuits from key academic and church positions, people began to fear the Illuminati's influence. This panic ultimately resulted in the government of Bavaria issuing an edict banning all secret societies in March of 1785. Soon after this, the Illuminati was effectively disbanded, having all of their documents and correspondence seized by the Bavarian government, and Weishaupt fleeing into exile. The Illuminati's documents were published by the Bavarian government in 1787, thus effectively ending the leverage of the Illuminati as a secret society. Weishaupt would live out the rest of his days in Gotha, writing book after book about the Illuminati and its mistreatment and persecution. An interesting fact is that Weishaupt and Dan Brown share the world record for most books written consecutively about the Illuminati. Just a little joke, of course, because Dan Brown has in fact written one more book than Weishaupt about the Illuminati. It's fascinating just how much of an impact the Illuminati truly had in terms of the collective consciousness of Europe, still being blamed for conspiracies even years after being disbanded, being blamed by some as having a hand in the French Revolution. Of course, the activity of blaming the Illuminati for things is still alive and well to this very day. And in my next video, I hope to look at many of the modern day conspiracy theories which people like to blame on the Illuminati. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I will finish that video within a reasonable time frame. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed whatever I end up calling this video.